for listening to Goddab Radio, a podcast for progressive thinking people. I'm Mad Dog Manser, and I'm here to bring you relevant and honest news and information that I find compelling. We cover politics, debunk conspiracy theories, report on cannabis, especially in Oregon, and feature guest interviews regularly. At Goddab Radio, we are ferociously progressive, fiercely skeptical, and forcefully scientific, always with a no-nonsense attitude. Today is Friday, March 31st, and we will cover some interesting topics. In our first section, our conspiracy hypothesis segment, we will look at the liberal media bias concept and how it's not true, and explain why people actually have started believing this drivel from the left and the right. In Carnival Barks, we will cover the stupid Trump bullshit from the week, specifically the healthcare bill defeat and Trump's response, his executive order that eviscerates the climate change goals set by Obama's administration, and Trump's golf habit. What a piece of shit he really is. It's amazing every week we do this segment. We will also have a recent cannabis news segment in our second half, and we will be covering quite a few different stories, and you'll just have to wait to see what those are. A couple of them from Oregon, and we're going to give you a rundown from all around the country, really, on some of the more important issues that are happening, just quick little excerpts. And we also want to thank our sponsors, of course. They are the ones that make Goddab Radio possible. Honey Badger Sungrown, Oregon Cannabis Connection, and Southern Oregon Alternative Medicine. And then also a real special thanks to Eric Sky for allowing us to use his amazing song, One for the Green. We use it to open and close our show, and we really appreciate him allowing us to do that. So let's go ahead now and let's just move on to, I guess we'll just move on directly to our conspiracy theory segment, which we are now calling Conspiracy Hypothesis. Hypotheses. I can't ever say it properly. I've got to get that down. Conspiracy hypotheses. Because conspiracy theories rarely rise to the level of theory. Anyway, and this is very true, of course, for our segment today. There has been a long-standing, probably for 25 years, heavy push, ever since Fox News started broadcasting, really, to paint the typical media, most of the media, as being unabashedly liberal. They've called it liberal biased media. More recently, Sarah Palin, thanks to Sarah Palin, they've called it the lamestream media, even, which is just crazy, I think. And of course, now we have a president that is hyping this same bullshit. He really pushes this heavily because, of course, nothing Donald Trump ever says is true, pretty much. Everything that comes out of his mouth, you cannot trust at all. And any half-decent media source is going to be challenging that. So he really pushes this concept constantly, trying to, paint what he says is true and what the media says is false. And of course, his favorite media, his favorite news is Fox News, which, of course, is probably the least newsworthy news source that's considered news on the web. Then, of course, there's things like Breitbart and Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and Blaze TV channel and some of those crazy, really, really right-wing slanted media outlets, and it gets pretty frustrating for the ones that are really not biased to get painted that way, and that gets pretty disturbing. I mean, to paint the Wall Street Journal as centrist as some of these more recent, I guess that you wouldn't call them. They're like graphs. If you've seen them, they've made these charts out of where the media lies, whether it's left or right along the centrist line, and according to different types of analysis, I don't know where they get these analysis, but they're trying to show that certain outlets are way left and certain outlets are way right. And I'll give you that MSNBC has a bit of an agenda, but I really don't think that CNN does, although I don't think CNN is a very good news source either, particularly. But I don't think they're slanted particularly either, especially NBC, regular NBC News, CBS News, ABC News. Just personally, I know that the truth tends to be more progressive and liberal. When they're reporting on things, the things that tend to be true tend to be more scientific, more left, and more liberal compared to what typical conservative wackos believe. I mean, the right-wing wackos, not the moderate folks. That I've got friends that are moderate Republicans. I can deal with them, but the Christian right and some of these other groups, I'm just saying, they're just out there. They're really out there. To paint them all the media's left mainstream is just kind of stupid. The concept of liberal media is an instance of what we call the hostile media effect. And what that is the tendency for people to have taken a position on an issue, and they see the media coverage of that issue as biased against their position. So you can imagine once you've decided that what you think is correct, and then you see reports that report against that, then you don't trust those reporters because you believe it's correct. Unfortunately, for many conservatives, they've gotten their truth, in quotes for sure. They've gotten that truth from Fox News or Breitbart or some just stupid right-wing media outlet. And, when you've done that and you've taken a position that they're correct, then all the other news sources seem like they're false. And you need to check yourself and realize that if only one or two of the right-wing media sources are reporting something, it's not likely that the other dozen major media sources that are reporting it completely the other direction are not wrong. Odds are Fox and the right-wingers are wrong. That's just take a deep breath and think about it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that the New York Times, CNN, NBC, Washington Post, the LA Times, all of these organizations are not going to be wrong. It just makes no sense at all. So you got to stop and think about it. Let me give you a little background on why some of this really happened. Some commonly cited, this isn't why it happened, but this is what is commonly cited as being examples or proof positive, they might say. Proof positive that the media is liberal and biased. Journalist party affiliation. That is one of the number one things. Most journalists are registered Democrats, and they vote for the Democrats. And most journalists are politically liberal themselves, and it's just not true. In a 2006 Pew poll, found that 31% of journalists said that they were a little to the left, while 9% replied that they were far left, for a total of only 40%. A total of 32% of journalists were registered Democrats. That's all in 2002. And that's down from 20 years earlier, or 10 years earlier in 1992. That number is actually down. There are people that have argued that even if journalists are personally liberal, advocates of liberal bias in the media are ignoring the fact that media outlets are often owned by corporations. This, they argue, means that a confluence of factors, including the owners exercising their prerogative to overrule editors, the influence of advertising money, and reliance on government and corporate-backed experts for information can negate the bias of individual journalists. Obviously, it would be an imperative to not criticize your employer, nor its business connections. So, that could be a big problem, especially when things like, NBC is owned by General Electric, right? As they mentioned in Rational Wiki, that's a really good example. The supposedly far left MSNBC station and they're reluctant to comment about General Electric. They didn't even hardly report on them avoiding paying any taxes in 2011. But as they mentioned in Rational Wiki, Rachel Maddow consistently breaks the rule with a cheeky little "hi, boss" during her episodes when she starts talking about General Electric being an influence on NBC. The Bernie Goldberg's Bias. The book Bias by former CBS journalist Bernie Goldberg is commonly cited. However, much of Goldberg's book relies on anecdotal evidence of his experiences working with Dan Rather and other CBS journalists, and contains some factual errors, as well as a bunch of unsubstantiated speculation. The main problem with Goldberg's book is that it collects a number of instances of bias but does not attempt to illustrate a systematic bias using broad empirical measures. In fact, many of the instances he cites as liberal bias could be seen as conservative bias or simply lazy reporting. For example, he faults Tom Brokaw for not reporting on a jet engine failure because it was made by NBC's parent company, General Electric. Another unsupported claim Goldberg makes is that the media always identifies conservative political figures as conservative, but doesn't do the same for liberals, supposedly because they see liberal as the mainstream. But he offers no statistics. It's just anecdotal evidence. Linguist Jeffrey Nunberg looked at the labeling of a number of political figures and found that liberals received partisan labels more than conservatives. That's right, more than conservatives. As Nunberg notes, the study was not comprehensive. It only looked at print newspapers, though it does offer more than baseless speculation. And then there's the Grosclose and Milio evidence. A 2005 study by UCLA political scientist Timothy Grosclose and University of Chicago economist Jeffrey Milio is often wheeled out as a definitive proof of the liberal media. Grosclose and Milio use ratings of congressmen given by the Americans for Democratic Action, or ADA, to quantify their liberal quotient that they set up. Then they took a list of think tanks and advocacy groups and assigned them a liberal quotient based on how many times they were cited by congressmen with certain ADA ratings. That's real scientific. Then they compared this to the number of times these organizations were cited by the quote-unquote mainstream media. There are a number of obvious problems with this methodology. One is that some issues aren't germane to balance. For instance, a citation from the NAACP, rated a liberal organization, on the issue of racism isn't going to be balanced by a citation from, say, the Ku Klux Klan. Another is that the Congress at the time of the study was majority Republican, which would affect the baseline and is probably why Fox News and the Washington Times were the only outlets to come out as conservative. A number of other methodological flaws have been pointed out by critics of the paper. And then there's always communications research. Most scholarly research in communication tends to find that bias in favor of either political party will balance out on the whole. A widely cited meta-analysis of media bias in presidential elections by Dalcio and Allen comes to this conclusion. Another study, Watts, comes to the same conclusion. Another study, Watts et al., suggests that the media's self-coverage of bias helps to perpetuate the notion of bias. Now, this is an important point to me. If the news media is going to spend 5 or 10% of their show every week, especially Fox News, talking about the lamestream media, the mainstream media, and the liberal bias they have, and how the only place you can get good information is from the always fair and honest Fox News, then that's just perpetuating this same problem, obviously. And, you know, it's just silly on its face, really, when you really think about it. In an August 2012 article in The Atlantic, David Graham examined mainstream media coverage of Mitt Romney and Barack Obama and found that, quote, liberals are getting the short end of the stick, unquote. He discovered that Republicans are quoted 44% more than Democrats. Negativity towards the president is 17% higher than his GOP counterpart. This was when Obama was president. And the 6 of the 8 popular news outlets featured were more negative towards Obama than Mitt Romney. Maybe a study on anti-incumbency and election reporting would be in order. Yeah, maybe. And then when you take into account overall the idea that that Trump is got a full force frontal attack going against all media outlets that say a negative thing about him. That's what he's doing. You realize that, right, folks? And this is one of the things that fascist and autocratic rulers do, is they discredit the court, they discredit the media, they discredit the Congress, and then they leave themselves propped up as the only reasonable solution left for people to trust in. During the campaign, Trump repeatedly mentioned that he's the only one you could trust. Only he could fix the problems here in Washington, right? Which obviously failed miserably just recently. Which, of course, leads us to our next segment. It's time for Carnival Barks, our weekly Trump roundup, where we highlight recent alternative facts from the so-called president. A segment where we point out the absurdities, lies, and blunders coming from the Trump administration. And this week we're going to start off with the health care bill failure. Epic failure by the president in his first attempt to get legislation passed through the Congress. The Democrats and the Freedom Party defeated it, thank God. Although I'm no big fan of the ACA, this was a stupid fucking bill. In the end, only 17% of Americans supported it. It never even got a vote and was pulled from the floor before that. The Freedom Caucus in the House stood up against this tax cut for the wealthy, believe it or not. Trump tried to blow it off and did not take responsibility for the failure. A classic denial by administration over such a major piece of legislation. Of course, they tried to force through a draconian, ridiculous bill that was just not worthwhile. And of course, it was going to raise rates on everybody around the country. It was going to cut services to everybody around the country. And to think that 83% of Americans came out against it, that's pretty significant. And then, of course, after the failure, Trump tweeted for everybody to watch Judge Jeannie Shapiro on Fox News later that evening. This was at the end of the week following the failure. And, of course, here's what Jeannie Shapiro said to open her show.
Paul Ryan needs to step down as Speaker of the House. The reason? He failed to deliver the votes on his health care bill, the one trumpeted to repeal and replace Obamacare, the one that he had 7 years to work on, the one he hid under lock and key in the basement of Congress, the one that had to be pulled to prevent the embarrassment of not having enough votes to pass. But this bill didn't just fail. It failed when Republicans had the House, the Senate, the White House. And the timing? It failed within the first 70 days of President Donald Trump's administration. A president who made replacement of Obamacare the hallmark of his campaign, and then used valuable political capital to accomplish it.
What the hell? Donald Trump absolutely threw Paul Ryan under the bus, demanded his resignation through Fox News's Jeannie Shapiro, Judge Shapiro, who's just such a horrible person. I'm sorry. She's a horrible person. And her voice is just grating. I can't, oh my God. Maybe it's my liberal bias kicking in. It could be. For me, it's progressive bias. I can't get over it. It's just petulant crybaby bullshit for Trump to think that this is Paul Ryan's fault. This was not going to get labeled as Ryan Care. It was going to get labeled as Trump Care if it had passed. And, I think that Trump in the end is pretty glad that this healthcare bill did not get through, because as we know on the campaign trail, Donald Trump talked a lot about how he wanted to have everybody covered. Everybody covered. I mean, we're talking national health care to do that, really. I mean, you can't cover everybody unless you offer them something that's paid for by taxes or some other way other than having to pay a premium to a private company, because it's always going to be too damned expensive if you keep including insurance companies in the middle between the patients and their doctors. And insurance companies are there to do nothing but make money for being a middleman. Insurance companies have nothing to do with healthcare. They are making money on the backs of people who are afraid of not being covered. It's just ridiculous. Well, we talked about this last week a little bit as well. I've been harping on it, but I'm really glad that it went down. And what I find particularly amusing is the idea that Donald Trump is trying to blame everybody but himself for trying to shove through this bill that he supported. He went to Capitol Hill, and just like Judge Shapiro mentioned on her crazy, stupid show on Fox, but she was correct. He spent a lot of political capital trying to get this bill passed. And to be quite honest, he spent it in the wrong place, and he spent it at the wrong time. It just goes to show you again that this president has no idea what he's doing. No idea. He doesn't know how to be president. He doesn't know how to be a leader. He's an autocrat. That's what he is. That's what he is in his business life. He dictates to others what to do. When he doesn't like what happens, he fires them and he moves on to the next person. When he doesn't like something a contractor did, if it's the smallest little problem, he will not pay them for the entire job. He's notorious for stiffing people. It's just fucking ridiculous, people. I'm sorry. And then let's move on to the next thing that this so-called fake president did. He signed yet another executive order. And this one rolled back climate change measures that Obama had put in place. Why? To end the, quote, war on coal, unquote. Yeah, and the, quote, job-killing regulations, unquote. I mean, that's what he said. And to boost energy independence is what he said. But experts insist that the plan won't do any of that. What an ignorant fool our fake president is. He is absolutely bending over backward to help out coal companies and energy companies that have been making, especially the energy companies, been making record profits. All the oil and natural gas companies. Of course, he's pushing the Dakota Access Pipeline to go through, the Keystone Pipeline to go through, so that Canadian companies can ship their oil out of our Gulf ports to foreign countries. So America won't make a dime on any of this It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's like a couple of big companies might, but it's not America. There's no Americans getting paid for this oil going all the way across our country, threatening all sorts of wetlands and wildlife areas, going through people's backyards. I mean, they're even talking about putting in a gas pipeline across Oregon that would transverse the bottom section of Oregon, cut through Jackson County, where I used to live down near Medford, and go all the way up to the city of Coos Bay. There's a lot of resistance to that. A lot of resistance from libertarian centered Republicans that don't want their land fucked with. And you know what? The government can just come in and take your land for projects like this. They've been doing it for a couple of 100 years now. So it's hard to resist, really. It really is. It's just crazy. And then the measure rewrites the Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon pollution from power plants, right? So now we're going to have dirty coal-burning power plants now. No clean coal. That's a thing of the past. It also lifts a ban on new coal mining on public land. Coal mining on public land, and bars federal departments from considering the effect of climate change on policy or national security. The short-sightedness of this is so amazing. It's just amazing. I mean, there is a national security matter when you consider that over the next 20 or 30 years, the sea level is going to rise 6 feet or something. That is a national security issue on Long Island, the Jersey Shore, Florida, and some of these low-lying places in the country, you know. And, oh wow, and then the grand buffoon. He used to mock President Obama for taking long vacations and playing too much golf specifically. I don't know if y'all remember that during the campaign, but that's one of his biggest gripes was Obama playing too much golf. But now Trump is playing a hell of a lot of golf himself. It's just fucking ridiculous. Down at Mar-a-Lago, the so-called president has visited a Trump golf course at least 13 times since he took office on January 20th, and seems to have hit the links at least 12 of those times. So he's gone golfing as many times in, what have we got now, about 10 weeks. He's already golfed a dozen times. That's more than once a week. You know, and it's not that I have a problem with golfing. I think that is probably the best way for a stressed out person to relax if you're going to play any sort of sport, to be quite honest. It's very relaxing. Golf is a big part of Donald Trump's life. He owns a bunch of golf courses. I think that it's okay for him to go play golf. I think he's doing it a little too often, but I probably wouldn't. You know, it's 3 or 4 hours to play. Big deal. He should be able to play one round a week. He's the president. That's not a big deal. But he shouldn't be bitching about Obama having had done it and then go out and do it, of course, more often himself. But again, that's the problem with this so-called fake president is he lies. He is an absolute liar. Everything that comes out of his mouth should be suspect for being false. Generally, I wouldn't trust a damn word the man says. And he's supposed to be the leader of the free world. But now, as we saw all the headlines in the newspapers last week, he is not the leader of the free world anymore. That goes to Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel. So Merkel is now the leader of the free world. Donald Trump would not publicly shake the Chancellor of Germany's hand when she came to visit the White House in front of cameras. He sat there again like a petulant child that wasn't getting his way and absolutely refused to shake her hand in front of the cameras. When she reached over, looked at him and says, "Should we shake hands? Shall we shake hands?" He ignored her. If you haven't seen the video clip of that, you need to see it. It's amazing. This man is not fit to be our president. So we'll continue to keep doing this segment, and hopefully he'll be out of office soon. But we want to keep repeating to folks that listen to our podcast, this man's a buffoon. He shouldn't be president, and hopefully he will be removed from office soon. That's all I got to say. Let's get a little word from our sponsors here. Tired of pills? We can help. At Southern Oregon Alternative Medicine, we offer chiropractic and naturopathic medicine, massage, acupuncture, and medical marijuana therapy. With clinics in 19 locations across Oregon and main offices in Portland, Springfield, and Medford, we make it convenient and easy for you too. Southern Oregon Alternative Medicine is the only clinic of its kind to offer both medical marijuana certification and full health care. You can find us online at www.soaltmed.com or southernoregonalternativemedicine.com, or call us at 541-779-5235. At Honey Badger Sun-Grown, they care about providing natural products. There are no chemical pesticides and no chemical fertilizers used in their cannabis grow, and they are motivated with a passion for natural cultivation. They take pride in sustainable and environmentally friendly cultivation and produce their product on the beautiful Willamette Valley floor. Honey Badger Cannabis is available at a number of dispensaries, including Grow High Station in Portland and Stash Cannabis Company in Beaverton. Ask for Honey Badger Sun-Grown products at your dispensary. You can visit them online at www.honeybadgersungrown.com. All right, well, welcome back to Goddab Radio, a podcast for progressive thinking people. We are entering our second half of the show, and as usual, we are going to be covering cannabis news in this section of the show. We don't have an interview this week, but I hope to have some interviews lined up for next week. Well, I don't know if it'll be cannabis. It may be. We may be talking with Jacob Bueros of the Direct Action Alliance. He's been real busy this week, and he couldn't come in for an interview, but we hope to get him on next week maybe. But this week, we're still, here in Oregon, we're still dealing with the pesticide testing rules changes. And there was a call to action put out by Oregonians for Public Health and Safety. It's a political action group that was set up by testing labs and concerned and reputable growers and processors to help keep Oregon's cannabis in a safe place away from pesticides and contaminants. There has been a recent push to roll back the testing rules in Oregon, specifically on concentrates, especially recreational use concentrates and flower. The concentrates, they want to start testing once a year. They would visit a concentrate processor and take a random sample once a year, and that's it. Of course, they passed this rule, or they're considering passing this rule because so many concentrates were failing for pesticide contamination. And of course, it makes you ask, why would they roll back the pesticide testing when there's so much contamination being found? And I think the reason is they've gotten a lot of pressure from concentrate processors that I think are stuck with tainted product right now. If you have a few pounds, 3 or 4 pounds of concentrate that you cannot sell and must be destroyed because it has pesticides in it, you're looking at whatever you can do to stop that from happening, because you cannot afford and do not want to destroy your crop. But you know what? They're considering remediation processes that can help these concentrate manufacturers still be able to sell their product by diluting it possibly. Those are being considered, some rules like that, which are fine. But dialing back the pesticide testing when there's a 26% failure rate is just ridiculous. So this call to action went out, and what they're asking is that citizens contact state regulators to tell them the new pesticide testing rules are dangerous and risky for customers. They are considering rules that reduce screening on concentrates to a single annual test instead of testing all products headed for the shelves of our recreational cannabis market. And they're reducing the flower tests to only 20% of batches, down from a third, because apparently they think that a 10% failure rate on flower is okay. Are you kidding me? Really? I mean, there's less than a 1% failure on food items, and the food items are tested at a much tighter tolerance for pesticides than the cannabis. The cannabis action levels are set higher than food, substantially. So when people tell you, oh, there's no way an apple or our food could stand up to this rigorous testing, actually, that's not true. It would stand up to this rigorous testing. The action levels on cannabis are much higher than it is for vegetables, and there's a failure rate that's just insanely high on cannabis that does not exist in food. Well under 1% of apples and blueberries and strawberries and lettuce and all those things. Less than 1% failure rate. Some of them less than 1/10 of 1% failure rate for pesticides. That's why food isn't tested as much. It's pretty simple, really. Here's the problem. Here's some of the problems with pesticide screening, or the main problem. 26% of all concentrates are contaminated with numerous pesticides. 10% of flour products are also contaminated. What about this does not make sense? Why would they be rolling back standards on bad products just to appease the processors that are bad actors? Why would they ignore a 26% failure rate for pesticides? Who wants this rule change made? Who stands to profit from allowing contaminated concentrates on the market? Ask yourself that. What will this do for Oregon's reputation for high-quality cannabis, which is some of the best cannabis in the world, I might add, but now we know that a whole lot of it is tainted with pesticides. Did you know that the action levels for pesticides on cannabis now are higher than on all other food products? And the flower failure rate is still 10%. Did you know that the cost for testing 4,000 gram concentrate batch with a control study approved is only 20 cents per gram? Did you know that there are currently no significant backups at most any labs in the state? Did you know that some labs are finding 50% or more of the concentrate batches contaminated with pesticides and over 30% of flour? Did you know that many processors did extractions without testing the flour used and are now stuck with hundreds of thousands of dollars in tainted product they can't sell? You want to consume that shit? I don't. I really don't. Make sure you call the OHA and tell them that you don't want tainted cannabis in the Oregon market. They are taking comments until April 30th by email. The email is publichealth.rules@state.or.us. That's publichealth.rules@state.or.us. You can also contact Governor Kate Brown at 503-375-4582 and Representative Ann Leininger at 503-986-1438 and let them know your feelings as well. You can also email Representative Leininger at rep.annlinger@state.or.us. Let's keep Oregon's cannabis pesticide free. Tell them to leave the pesticide testing rules alone. Really, Stash? Well, this is Goddab Radio, and I do have my two big dogs, so they're often in the studio with me. I think they need to go out. Gonna have to take a little break here. Well, what are you gonna do about a dog that needs to go to the bathroom? You let him out. All right. Here's some more news. There is some great news coming from Oregon, from the Oregon Hemp Convention, which is now titled the PDX Hemp Fest Expo. They have struck a licensing deal with the Seattle Hemp Fest to rename it and to use the Seattle Hemp Fest coattails to help promote the event. This from Oregon Cannabis Connection, of course. The former Oregon Hemp Convention has teamed up with the legendary Seattle Hemp Fest and will produce the PDX Hemp Fest Expo under a newly announced franchise agreement. The agreement comes on the heels of a number of Hemp Fest licensed events. The Portland-based Expo, now in its third year, is a more educational-oriented event than the typical Hemp Fests that are licensed, such as the Oregon Hemp Fest, formerly the Umpqua Valley Hemp Fest, and the coming Austin, Texas Hemp Fest. Yeah, coming in October of 2017. That's awesome, Austin. Quote, "We are thrilled to partner with our Portland family as we continue to define the Pacific Northwest as a regional leader in the burgeoning cannabis industry," Vivian McPeak, the Seattle Hemp Fest executive director, said in a press release. Jerry Norton, the event organizer, told Oregon Cannabis Connection, we called Jerry and talked to him, it's going to be a home run for us, and they thought it was perfect for them too. We're going to be able to co-affiliate, and they are the largest hemp festival in the world, explained Norton. Sharon from HempFest said, "We like to educate, so it's going to be a good fit for us." It's awesome, Jerry. We love this. Ed Rosenthal has been booked for the Portland Hemp Fest Expo, along with a long list of other speakers and panelists. He has a new book coming out titled Harvest, and he will be having a signing and giving harvest presentation, explained Norton. The event will be Saturday, June 10th, 2017, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Portland Expo Center at 2060 North Marine Drive in Portland. That's actually the last stop of the Yellow Max line heading northbound before it goes out of the, or stops just short of going into the river way up there. It's into the line, yellow line, so check it out. We're real excited that they've teamed up, that Jerry has teamed up with Seattle Hemp Fest. I think that's a great deal. Some national news in the cannabis world. Trump chooses an acting drug czar. Richard Baum is his name. It appears that Richard Baum has been chosen by the White House as the acting drug czar. Baum has held a variety of positions within the Office of National Drug Policy over 18 years. Most recently, he has held the position of International Division Director. Dan Diamond from Political Pulse tweeted the news on March 28th. Quote, "Rich Baum, a longtime drug policy expert and ex-Hill GOP staffer, tapped to be acting White House drug czar." Tom Angel's Marijuana Moment, the daily cannabis update, reported that Baum is also adjunct professor of public policy at Georgetown University's McCourt Graduate School in Washington, D.C., and he recently taught a class entitled "The War on Drugs, Causes, Consequences, and Alternatives." The course description online says, quote, "The course will explore the development and impact of these policies, focusing on the formation of initial domestic drug laws, the international drug treaties, centralization in the White House of drug policy making starting in the Nixon and Bush Sr. administrations, policy responses to increased drug use in the 1960s and 70s, and the crack cocaine epidemic in the 1980s. All right. And then we got some great news from Arkansas. Arkansas, can you believe their legislature? I just can't believe it. I watched this unfold when they made the vote on the 28th. Arkansas is poised to pass pharmacist requirements for dispensaries. I watched as their House voted on this bill and passed it overwhelmingly. Arkansas has taken the dramatic step of introducing legalization that will require every medical marijuana dispensary in the newly legal state to staff a pharmacy consultant to help answer questions from patients and to assist dispensaries. It passed the House on March 28th with a vote of 81-8, with only 2 voting present. The bill, House Bill 2190, was introduced by Clint Penzo and includes a provision to protect pharmacists from any liability for assisting a pharmacy as a consultant. Yeah, that's what's really stupid about this. The bill states, quote, "A pharmacist shall not be subject to arrest, prosecution, or penalty in any manner or denied any right or privilege, including without limitation a civil penalty or disciplinary action by the Arkansas State Board of Pharmacy or by any other business, occupational, or professional licensing board or bureau solely for performing his or her duties as a pharmacist consultant for a registered dispensary." The Arkansas Pharmacists Association thinks it's a great idea, even though they were a vocal opponent to the medical legalization measure during the November election. Their CEO, Scott Pace, told KSM5 News in Fort Smith, quote, "We think it's common sense legalization that will make sure that public safety is first," unquote. The bill would intend to train dispensary personnel on the risks and side effects of marijuana and also to look for substance abuse warning signs. The pharmacist would be required to present would not be required to be present, as long as they are readily available to answer questions by phone or video conference. In addition to the pharmacist provision, the bill also requires that dispensaries have vaporizers available for patients to purchase so they have an alternative to full combustion of the cannabis and have a cleaner delivery method. That's pretty cool. The only good part of the bill, I'd say. On March 28th, the legislature powered through a string of bills rapidly all afternoon. When they arrived at this bill, well over 30 minutes of debate broke out. Most of the legislators spoke in favor of the bill, including Representative Robin Lundstrom, who explained, quote, "This is medical marijuana. We are treating it like medicine, and we're putting in at least a speed bump. At least someone that the patient can consult with and get a little help. I think it's a good bill. It's a start. Is it perfect? No. But it is a start towards treating medical marijuana like medicine." However, one representative had concerns relating to the requirement of a pharmacist, the undue influence of the Pharmacy Association on passing of the bill, and even brought up the relationship between opioid abuse and cannabis and how it's a conflict for pharmacists to help dispense medical marijuana. All of these concerns were brought up by Representative Douglas House during his argument against the bill. House explained, quote, "Where are you going to get 32 pharmacists to leave Walgreens or CVS or Bob's drugstore and go off to a marijuana dispensary and spend all day long waiting for someone to walk in to talk about their drug situation? They can't establish that. Where are the rules and regulations from the pharmacy board that are supposed to govern these folks? They're not here. They haven't even been brought into this discussion. This is, like I said, it's just a germ of a good idea." There's a video available you can watch of this session, and you can find that at occnewspaper.com. Arkansas poised to pass pharmacist requirement for dispensaries. The bill goes back to the Arkansas Senate for consideration, and it is likely to pass there. Then it goes to Governor Asa Hutchinson's desk to be signed. Being the former DEA administrator under George W. Bush, he will most likely sign the bill. No doubt. Just really kind of crazy stuff. There's actually some medical news about lowering your BMI, your body mass index. This is from Johnny Green at weednews.co. Marijuana users have been portrayed historically as lazy bums. That is not actually the case. Many people live an active lifestyle and use cannabis. People that eat right and exercise regularly, yet also consume cannabis, are just as healthy and fit as anyone else. There are numerous examples out there of professional athletes who use marijuana, and they are some of the top physical human specimens on the planet. Think about that. Think about our favorite one we like to talk about is Phelps, of course, the swimmer. Amazing. And he loves smoking marijuana. The results of a study which found that a regular marijuana use is associated with a lower body mass index, or BMI. The study was conducted in Oregon, where I live, which I think is very cool. From normal. Those subjects who consume cannabis more than 5 times per month possess, on average, lower body mass index than do those who do not use the substance, according to data published online ahead of print in the Journal Archives of Osteoporosis. Researchers at Oregon's Health Science University assessed the relationship between cannabis use and a variety of health outcomes in a nationally representative sample of 4,743 participants between the ages of 20 and 59. Authors reported, quote, heavy users of cannabis had a lower mean BMI compared to that of never users, with a mean BMI being 26.7 kilograms per meter in heavy users and 28.4 kilograms per meter in never users. The finding is consistent with those of prior reviews, which, such as those that they reference in the article. Visit normal.org to get more information on this. As Normal touches on in the piece, this is not the first time a study has reached this conclusion. The study also found no relationship between marijuana use and decreased bone density. As Normal points out, marijuana use actually has been associated with bone-stimulating effects. Yes, very cool. Again, that's from weednews.co. I highly recommend everybody visit the Weed News website regularly because they have awesome information. Put up 4 to 6 stories every day, I would guess, and they cover cannabis news around the country and the world better than any other website that I know. Really love those guys. Johnny Green, Jeff White, who else we got? We got Anthony Johnson working for weednews.co. We got Russ Belville working for weednews.co. Carl Wellstone is writing articles for weednews.co. Great website. I highly recommend you check it out. And our last story here is a pretty cool one. This from Oregon Cannabis Connection. Of course, you should visit Oregon Cannabis Connection for your cannabis news in Oregon because we're the best, of course. Just a disclaimer, that's my website and my newspaper. Just saying. Pygmies in Africa cultivate marijuana to survive in the DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the war-torn dictatorial nation of Democratic Republic of Congo, the indigenous pygmies have taken to marijuana cultivation. The relatively small population of 600,000 forest-dwelling natives that has been long pushed to the bottom of the economic ladder have had to survive on only $1 a day. According to a new report by National Geographic, they have come to rely on marijuana as a fairly reliable income, but it comes with its perils. The Congolese military and police have a love-hate relationship. At times, they can be brutal to the marijuana farmers, beating them and arresting them. And at other times, they are the clients of the very same growers. National Geographic reports, quote, but the medicine and extra francs come at a high cost. There's a small wooden shack behind the perimeter of their huts. Mubawa says that villagers are often arrested by the Congolese army for selling marijuana and held in that hut. Soldiers patrol the village nearby every day. 3 or 4 wander the area during the 2-hour conversation, but it's never clear whether they were there as customers or law enforcers. Villagers say that if the soldiers have recently been paid, they will buy the marijuana. If they haven't, then they will confiscate it and demand the growers pay a fine. If you have money, you pay. If not, they beat you until they get tired, Mubawa says. He has a gun, I have an arrow. Since pygmies and hunter-gatherers historically, the article looks at the arrival of marijuana to the area of Central Africa and when the pygmies began their agrarian lifestyle. They discuss the illicit markets, how the Congolese military and police impede in trafficking, and more. Check out the full article at www.news.nationalgeographic.com. And we want to thank everybody for listening to our show this week. I thought it was a good show. Had a lot of cannabis news, some great carnival barks, and of course, talking about that crazy lamestream media conspiracy theory. Not a real thing, folks. So tune in next week. You can catch us every Friday at 3 p.m. You can find us on www.goddabradio.com or Stitcher and iTunes and Amazon and Google Music Play and all the other places you find podcasts. We should even be on iHeartRadio now. So until next week, thanks for listening and tune in again to Goddab Radio.